I'd like to introduce James Watmo. So James is the strategic place lead. Have I got that right? Strategic partnership lead for Sport England, and James has been on a bit of a journey with Cornwall for some time now, and he might be accused of many things, but he cannot be accused of not being a man of his word. And some of you in this room will have joined us probably a couple of years ago now at a similar event where we were just beginning to think about some of this stuff, and James quite bravely stood up and was captured on film, suggesting that there might be a significant opportunity coming Cornwall's way. So, and here we are today. So there's a couple of lessons in there. One is if you've got a major investor, make sure you capture them on film, promising to do something. James, I'll hand over to you to
Thank you
take us through
for that introduction. Yeah, and I've just got my arms free from the ties behind my back. So good afternoon, everybody. It's fantastic to be here in Cornwall and to talk about our place partnership work. Becky, that was brilliant. I don't think I need to say much more than why we should be doing this, but I think it's probably worth going through a little bit of the national history to what kind of brings us here today and how that connects with the work that we'll do locally. If the slides work. Okay. So at Sport England, we're about 4 years into a 10-year strategy called Uniting the Movement. And Uniting the Movement is solely focused on tackling inequality and inactivity. We have been a pretty successful organisation for many years investing in community sport, but it hasn't particularly changed the toughest challenges. There are more people more active, but actually there's the same number of people that are inactive. And that is hiding a lot of different sort of social issues that we're all aware of. But all of those different audiences that probably have the least opportunities to be active are within that population. And so something needed to change. We were stuck on kind of 4-year funding cycles from government, which only led to a certain amount of kind of delivery and change. And so launching into a decade of delivery and a decade kind of ambition really signalled a step change in how we were doing things. And as I say, we're about 4 years into that so far, and a key element to that is our place work. We did break up the 10-year strategy into sort of implementation plan periods, and the first implementation plan talked about increasing the number of places that we'll be working in across England, and really focusing in on those places that have the greatest need, those ones that are showing us in terms of activity levels that they are low in terms of activity and high in terms of inactivity, but also wider social outcomes as well. So poor health, deprivation, community safety, all of these different things that I'm sure all of us are kind of engaged with and focusing on at the moment. So our commitment is a £250 million investment over the next 5 years to expand those place partnerships to a further 80 places, Cornwall being one of those places that we've identified. But also building on the work of what was our local delivery pilots, and I'll come on to that a little bit. And we have James here from Exeter who's going to talk through their experience. There are 4 key outcomes that we're focused on. Shouldn't be a surprise really to anybody coming from Sport England, but I think I do want to make the point that sometimes we're a little bit handcuffed by our name, and I really want to get across to the point that this is about everyday movement, activity in its broadest sense. So yeah, sport is still an important part of what we do, and it's still an important part of building that kind of active nation, but we are really broadening our scope here in terms of what activity means. That kind of breaks down into 2 kind of key areas. One is around a revenue and capital investment into those further 80 places and our existing pilots. And then also what we're calling a universal offer. So 25 million of that to support more places to sort of think in this way and work in this way through a suite of tools and resources and facilitation, which we won't particularly cover today. We'll be focused on the top part of that. So progress today, we started a first phase of this in November 2023, and we had 53 places as part of that first phase. That's actually changed a little bit now, so it's 52 have now had an initial investment secured. So making good progress on that first phase. I'll come on to talking about leadership, but we've been running leadership courses in those places, probably well over 20 now, which is really trying to bring in that kind of learning around systems leadership and how to kind of do and think differently, as was described earlier. We've been publishing our analysis, which has kind of driven us to these places. So our place needs classification, which I'll talk about in a little bit as well. That's really a sort of national data tool that has brought us to specific places across the country. And phase 2 is rolling out at the start of this year, which Cornwall is in phase 2. So working with a further 27 places in phase 2. I mean, this is something that's on a lot of people's mind at the moment, but devolution, local government reform, clearly as we are zooming down into very specific places and very specific systems and structures, as they evolve and change over the next few years through that piece of work, it's something that is massively on our mind at the moment. Obviously, we might find ourselves in a slightly different situation here in Cornwall, but it is worth recognising that is a growing area for us as a national organisation. So what am I talking about? What do we mean by place-based systemic working? As I said, we piloted this over 5 or 6 years in 12 places across the country. You can see the locations of those, and we have lots and lots of information, learning, reports and case studies from the work that happened during that pilot period. And that taught us so much. It taught us about us being a different funder and being in a more sort of relational rather than transactional space, and really getting in and alongside our partners at a local level to help support the work and going in with a kind of open and vulnerable mindset rather than a kind of, well, we're the national funder, we'll tell you what to do, you report on that every few months and we'll go away all happy. We started off with this model, which some of you might be familiar with. It's a socio-ecological model of systems. And just, well, we call it the onion diagram, which I guess you can see why. But starting with the individual at the bottom and really understanding their attitudes, their beliefs, their behaviours, their needs, and then working out from that position into their sort of immediate social environment. So what is happening with their individual relationships, their families, the support groups and social networks. Then moving up into the kind of organisations and institutions that they connect with on a regular basis. So that could be school, could be the GPs, could be work, anything like that. But basically where they're holding a trusted relationship. Then the immediate kind of physical environment. So as you leave your front door, are you met by a concrete jungle? Are you met by a beach? Are you met by green open space? And how does that either encourage you or discourage you to lead a more active life? And then finally, the kind of policy level at within that area. So are there things in place that either encourage or discourage people to be physically active? And that can be as broad as you like, really. That can go from transport to leisure policy to health policy to policies that you find within local organisations as well. Sometimes you can go even higher level and talk about kind of cultural norms. We as a nation have certain attitudes and behaviours towards certain things. The one that I like to use is that if you're ever ill, most people will say to you, put your pyjamas on and get in bed, have a rest. But actually getting out and being more physically active might be a better option there. But if you're seen out having a walk while you're having a day off by one of your colleagues, you might be in a bit of trouble. And that's just how we are as a nation. That's our attitude towards that kind of moment in time. So it's about maybe changing that perspective. So we've evolved that approach from that sort of onion diagram, and I highly recommend that document, which I think I've seen around the place, People and Places, and that's the story of the local delivery pilots. And we'll hear from James about an individual kind of story and journey that they've been on in Exeter. But that has transferred into what we're calling the... what are we calling this, Ross? Conceptual framework. That just went completely out of my brain. Anyway, so conceptual framework. I hope that's not on camera. Basically, to bring that to life really quickly, you've kind of got 3 areas of action, which are the 3 bits across the top. So integrating physical activity into other sectors. The middle one is strengthening community and individual capacity, so working with community organisations to make them more sustainable, more skilled and future-proof. And then tackling structural inequality, so really getting to grips with what's happening in people's lives and what are we doing as a system to kind of compound maybe where there's a lack of opportunity. So they're the sort of 3 big areas of action, but sitting below that there are sort of conditions for change, and these are cross-cutting conditions for change. I'm not going to massively go into this right now because I think we'll have time to kind of talk about those, but you can see for yourself there's areas for kind of working practice, conversations, ideas to look across those 3 different areas for action. On that web address there's lots more resources that kind of bring that to life. But over time, I think we'll really be getting stuck into this as a model to think about what we're going to do. This came from the sort of pilot phase as well. These were kind of principles that have guided people within that work and really thinking about how they behave and do their practice. I'll highlight a couple. I think one is around this is messy, and that's okay. When you think about a place and you think about an individual in that place and the system that sits around them that either enables or disables them from being more active, that can feel really, really, really messy, but that's okay. You'll feel like you're taking 1 step forward and then 4 steps back, but that's the difficulty in kind of changing things for the longer term. I think bridging that empathy gap is really important as well. So really deep listening to communities and really trying to understand what is going on for them in their lives at the moment, and not going in with kind of predefined, pre-decided ideas. It's about us responding more effectively to their needs. And I think Craig kind of touched on this at the start, but we can't solve the problem with the same mindset that created it. So we've really got to sort of challenge ourselves about the way that we do things. And that can be really tough. It's been tough for us at Sport England to kind of own up to the fact that we've invested millions and millions of pounds and not particularly changed things. And so, we've had to step into a more sort of vulnerable space, really challenge our assumptions and change how we do things. Hopefully you'll feel that today in how we're thinking about this investment. But I think that's on all of us to do the same. So there's some key components that have kind of emerged over that pilot phase that we'll be encouraging these new places to kind of work through. One is around evaluation and learning. So previously at Sport England, we would have been very good at sort of, giving a few £1 million to a particular sport. I'm going to pick on volleyball because Craig used to work for volleyball. We give a few £1 million to volleyball and say you need to increase the active lives numbers in volleyball by X over a certain period of time. And if they did, they got more money. And if they didn't, we took money away. It was a pretty toxic kind of transactional relationship, which just wasn't good at all. So we've tried to evolve that into a bit more of an evaluative and learning space, not a performance management space. So going back to those kind of conditions for change, we'll be looking to track your progress against those conditions for change and seeing how you're maturing in that work. We won't be counting numbers. We won't be bean counting. We'll be looking to support and, invest in the evolution and the increase in maturity of the local system to do this work. And part of that is cycles of learning. So making sure that we're all lifting our heads up and reflecting on what we're doing, making sure that that is evolving all the time and improving all the time. Going to move on from that. Leadership, another key area for us. I mentioned at the start that we'd been running some leadership courses in that first phase. So we've learned a lot over this period of piloting this work, and we'd already done some leadership work with the LGA and working with local authorities to try and embed sport and physical activity more into their work. It's not a statutory thing, as many of you will know, so it's on us to try and encourage that to be intertwined into different policies. And so through kind of greater, braver, more collaborative leadership, which this course that is described here kind of encourages, we have seen that change kind of happen. So as part of being a place partnership, you'll be in receipt of one of these leadership courses and have ongoing support from the facilitators that take you through that course. And it's been seen as a really kind of effective springboard into the work to kind of act and think differently and work together differently. So see that as a key element. There's also many areas that we kind of invest in through this work as well. We see a lot of test and learn kind of investment, so trying things out, seeing if it works, if it doesn't, moving on, trying something different. Not being afraid to kind of get stuff wrong and fail, but making sure that we are learning from it as we go. So just kind of connected to those first two things around learning and leadership. Like, let's be brave in that space. Let's, be prepared to get stuff wrong and whatever flack we might get from getting that wrong, but at least we're trying. At least we're trying to do something different, learning from it and moving forward. So the way that we kind of split the investment is we tend to encourage places to come in for a short-term development award. So up until this point, these development awards have been around about the sort of £250,300,000 mark. And it's been for generally about a 12-month period. That is completely up to you as local partners to decide how you want to do that and whether you want to do that. You can go straight into a full award, but our general kind of advice has been to start with a development award. And that is to kind of build a clearer picture about what you're going to do. So to really get into the detail of understanding the communities that you want to focus on, what's happening for them at the moment and what our response might be. But also, appointing capacity or building your governance to make decisions at a local level. There's all of these kind of things that will set the foundations for the longer term that we kind of strive to achieve in that development award period. And then coming back in for a full award, which is the longer term kind of bigger value award, which will take you through to March 2028. And that is just an initial funding period. James will talk about it with Exeter. We've just agreed some further investment, which will take us to 10 years of investment. And we're doing that with all of our original place partnerships. And that's new territory for us as a national funder, a decade of investment committing to the same purpose. And the hope is that we will be able to do the same here. We're just a little bit limited by new government, all of the different things that is going on at the moment. But we're definitely here till 2028, and we hope to be here for a lot longer than that. I'm just going to bring Stuart up now as well, who's going to just talk to us about our capital work.
Hi everyone, Stuart Makepeace, Capital Investment Manager at Sport England. So as James said, just got a few minutes around the capital element of the place-based working. So what we've done at Sport England, those of you that have been around the sector for a while will know that traditionally we've had bespoke capital funding programs, whether it'll be small scale for community assets or larger scale for leisure centres and projects like that. The decision was taken to merge our capital funding, with the exception of the limited one within the Movement Fund, to within our overall place budget. So we don't have bespoke capital funding programs anymore. Our capital funding is within the place work. So what we're looking to do is to very much take an integrated approach. So when you're looking at what the place needs, please consider it from both a capital and a revenue perspective. When looking at capital priorities, it's essential that they align with the priorities that are coming out of the place work. So when you're considering the different capital schemes, you need to be able to demonstrate how they align with the priorities that are emerging and how they will help to tackle inequalities in your place. In terms of what potential types of capital schemes we could see, we're trying to not be too directional on that. So you could come forward with, say, traditional sports projects, maybe linked to the community sports club sector. Could be linked to a new or a refurbished leisure centre. It might be something around community halls and making them more accessible for physical activity. Or it could be something around active environments and making the outdoors more accessible to people. So we're really not trying to tell you what you should be coming forward to. It's for yourselves as local partners, local stakeholders, to determine what the capital priorities should be. In terms of potential investment levels, then we very much take a proportionate approach to it, considering the scale of investments that we could potentially get from a capital project. So the movement fund goes up to 15,000, which doesn't buy you a lot of capital. So we're basically, from a place perspective, looking at 15k upwards, with our maximum awards at around the £2 million mark, where we have invested a sum of close to 2 million. We're very much a minority funder in those types of projects, and that's gone towards new leisure centres, refurbished leisure centres. It's important to note that whilst I'd like a lot of money to be spent on capital, we do have a limited capital pot, and so the process will be competitive, and we won't be able to support all of the capital projects put forward. What we're aiming to do is to create a pipeline of potential capital projects. So we don't expect schemes to be fully developed when they're shared with us. So if you've got a capital idea, if you've got a project that you think could align with the place work, then we'd encourage you to have early conversations with Active Cornwall and with ourselves. In terms of capital projects that might be being led by a community group, then there could be some support that we could provide in the early stages of a project's development, for example, around creating briefs if the community organisation is struggling with that. So just the final request from me is, when looking at what your place needs, please look at it from both a capital and a revenue perspective. Thank you.